players' salaries, right? It seems like it's an absolute minefield. It's a shit show. Look at Leicester. They've lost 3 or 4 of their best players. Guys have walked out. Northampton, we're hearing they've done stuff the right way, 12.5% pay cuts. Gloucester, Saracens have deferred payments. Exeter and Bristol have given guys longer deals and they haven't cut their salary. What are you making about all this? You're quite outspoken, you're quite candid, articulated when you speak. Do you want to talk about it?
I think there needed to be more transparency between clubs and players and more open chats and more open dialogue, because some guys just, like for us, we were finding out about stuff in the bloody Daily Mail. Do you know what I mean? And it's just like, guys are messaging each other on Instagram like, bro, I'm hearing you getting pay cuts, and this is guys from other English clubs, and I'm just like, bro, I have no fucking clue. But then you hear like 25%, 25% is a bloody lot of quid, you know what I mean? So it's just, I think there wasn't enough open transparency, there wasn't enough open dialogue between sort of clubs and players, and that's why you've kind of got guys, like at Leicester, all of a sudden just walking out, or, that's how it's been portrayed, that they've walked out on their clubs, but actually that's not really the truth, is it? Like they're well within their rights to reserve their rights, and then they've been told, well, you have to sign this by this date, at 25% less or else. And then guys have decided, that's not what I need to do right now. And fair fucks to them.
In this interview, I talked to Wasps and All Black Lima Sopoaga. We talk about the new league that's up and running in New Zealand. We talk about Wasps. We talk about lockdown. We talk about reflection. But we also talk, again, salary cuts. What's it like being at a Premiership club? Is it the same for everyone? And how he's been treated around that. Don't miss it. We're on RugbyPass. How's things, buddy? You all right?
Yeah, not too bad, bro. Just going with the flow, doing what we can.
Yeah. Good stuff, mate. And how is it for you in this situation that we found ourselves in? Not just as a sportsman, but a guy that is, you couldn't be any further away from home, and we're watching rugby back on TV. We're watching all the interactions that we miss of just being around people. You're that far away from home. You're in Coventry. There's no rugby.
Yeah, I guess it's a little bit weird, really, when I get to sort of watch the game. But from a selfish point of view, I actually think this time away from the game has benefited me, like, immensely, mentally, physically. And I've got 2 young daughters, so to watch them run around and grow up for the last 2 months has been, pretty special. So from that point of view, I actually haven't minded being in lockdown. I guess, I've been able to get a taste of actually what, like partners, wives, stay-at-home parents go through every day. And, it's nothing short of a miracle, really.
No, absolutely, mate. No, I agree. I've got 4 kids as well. Maybe I'm not in the position that you're in, maybe loving it as much. We've got twins that are 2. I've got a 9-year-old and a 7-year-old. So trying to balance that. I know, and I've still got a bit of work to do as well. Like, well, this isn't work. This is actually a joy to be able to chat to you. What do you make of
the bags under your eyes, bro? That's the same bags I have, from lack of sleep, man.
Mate, I know. But this is makeup as well, just for the video interview as well. This is as good as it gets for me in terms of visuals. There's talk. I think it's confirmed. There's not talk. It's confirmed now. The North-South game that's going to be played in New Zealand. They seem to be revolutionary in what they do. Maybe that's because I love New Zealand. You're a guy who was born and raised in the North Island, but played in the South Island. How is that going to pan out in terms of rivalries?
I have witnessed one game, and it was like a North-South, and I don't know how they kind of picked the teams, but it was definitely North-South, and it got pretty heated out there. So guys are definitely out, sort of baying for blood, and it's like you're playing some of your best mates, you're representing sort of the area you're from. So I think there'll be fireworks. As per usual, but I think the criteria for being picked in sort of North-South is a little bit weird, because you've got guys like Anton Leonard-Brown and Damien McKenzie who will be picked for the North Island because they played their first sort of professional game in the North Island, but they're born and bred in the South Island. Do you know what I mean? So
yeah. I had no idea. I had no idea that was the case. No, okay.
Yeah,
Keep going.
like they're like true Southerners, like that's their home, South Island, but they just play in the North, you know what I mean? So I think they're going to have to represent the North Island because of the way that sort of the criteria has been picked. And likewise in the South, you've got guys like, I think Geordie Barrett and Scott Barrett, they'll be representing the South because they played their first games for Canterbury, their first sort of professional games for Canterbury, but they're hardcore Taranaki boys, like from the North Island. So, it's kind of like a little bit mixed.
Yeah, I think that kind of emotion that's added. You see that in the state of origin, don't you? Like you can actually feel it when you watch it. You can see how much it means to play for your state. And so we saw some interaction between Beauden Barrett and his former teammates at the Hurricanes, right? So again, my superficial viewing of watching Super Rugby, and I keep saying superficial because that's all it is, but the Crusaders, I used to watch them because they were the best team, in my opinion, and Dan Carter, Kieran Reid, Richie McCaw, obviously. So these were guys that never really moved from there. So the game's changing now, it's evolving. Why would Beauden Barrett leave his last club? Is the loyalty still the same in New Zealand? Because they're centrally contracted. So why would he move to another franchise and have that, obviously have to play against a team that he's been at for so long? I mean, is the loyalty still in New Zealand, or is it solely down to business now?
Well, I think sort of Beauden Barrett's a bit of an anomaly. I think his wife is from there, so I think that had kind of like a bit to do with it. Like I don't know personally, but I know his wife is definitely from Auckland, and like if you look at Beauden Barrett, he's almost the new Dan Carter. So commercially, it makes sense for him to go up there. Like it's a bigger market commercially, and that's where you kind of get sort of more of your off-field deals as well. Up in a big market like Auckland, like New Zealand's a very small place, that off the field, there's not much opportunity for guys to kind of work commercially, if that makes sense. A big player in a big market like Auckland, then you tend to get more of the deals and things like that. And I think it probably came down to that, and just the opportunity to move towards his wife's family, and I know he's having a family himself, so I think all that support around that just kind of factored into why he decided to make the move. And like for me, I think I look at Bodie, he did everything he could for the Hurricanes. He became an All Black, played 100 games down there, won a Super Rugby title. Like what more does a franchise, what more can a franchise ask of a player? He came there as no one and left as arguably the best rugby player in the world at the moment. So
have you had time to look back around everything that's happened with your move to Wasps, and mentally how you are about things now, and then looking forward? Obviously loads of changes. Di Young was in tenure, was in situ for a long time. Lee Blackett comes in. There's a load of stuff, a load of movement happening in the Prem. But for you personally, have you had a bit of time for reflection?
Yeah, for sure. Like I've like this like I said before, COVID has been an awesome time for me personally, and I've been able to kind of sit down and think, why hasn't my time here at the moment been as successful as I would have liked? And like I don't put blame on anybody else or look to point the finger, and to be fair, I've got to look at my own self in the mirror, and maybe things that I didn't do well enough. And I think one of the things that I probably wasn't kind of aware of, or maybe I was a little bit naive, was that I just kind of thought, I'm going to the Northern Hemisphere. I tie my shoelaces the same. I put a ball down on the tee, I kick it through the goalpost. It's played on a square bit of grass with some white lines. Fuck, how hard can it be? You know what I mean? It's rugby. I've done this since I was 5 years old, but and for me, I probably didn't prepare myself mentally enough for the for the changes of how the game is played and the way other people around the world see the game, and just the fact that I had built relationships in Dunedin for sort of 9 years, and how much that actually affects your rugby. And like I kind of just thought, I'll just come here, like it's just rugby. I'll hang out with Dan Robertson, will be sweet. But rugby's not like that. You don't just all of a sudden just click by by thinking, oh yeah, sweet, this is rugby, bang, I'm all of a sudden just going to do what I can do. it takes time, especially I think in a pivotal position like 10, where you're actually running a team and you're trying to control the game and put players in the right places and really drive a team forward. I think, like I said, I was a bit naive to the fact that I just thought that it was just going to be the same old, just turn up, train hard, and then get the job done. But, rugby's not like that. And moving to the other side of the world and new coaches, new systems, new teammates, all those kind of things factor into, why I wasn't performing at the best of my ability. And, I'll be the first one to put my hand up and happily say that, I was below par and the team was below par as well. But, at the end of the day, rugby's a team sport, and, you can't just rely on one guy to get the job done or build a culture or win games. It's the collective sort of right from the top down, like from the CEO all the way down to the kit man. It's everybody's got to be sort of rowing in the same direction. And I think maybe when I got to the club, sort of we had guys sort of rowing in different directions and, not trying to head towards one common goal.
Yeah, absolutely. You could see that as well. But you could see that there was some stuff going on at Wasps. Obviously, Malachi Fekitoa got injured quite early. Jimmy Gopperth, who I know you speak really highly of, was injured. He's a massive, massive player for you guys. The game's professional now. There's so many different variables around that. Have you noticed anything culturally, not looking to open people up, but the way that the teams interact, like with each other, and the off-field stuff compared to New Zealand? It might not be, it might be right, it might be wrong, or whatever. But how different is it?
Yeah, like for me, it's quite different because I don't know how like the junior rugby works here and the system that from 5 years old all the way up, but sort of grassroots rugby in New Zealand is quite community based. It's quite family orientated. You go down to your local rugby club and you come up with the same guys all the way through the grades, yada yada yada. And I think sort of because the game in New Zealand has grown from such a young age, then that kind of tends to filter on until you make rep teams and things like that. Sort of the things that you learn at club rugby, you tend to take with you and you tend to hold dear to your heart, kind of thing. Like for me, it's probably having playing for more than a check, or like you've got to have guys buying into something bigger than themselves. And I think for a lot of sort of island boys especially, they've got to have a sense of belonging, a sense of like for me it's like if you sort of get to the root and the heart of a player, and like because not every player is the same, like if you get to what drives him, what excites a player, and I think that from my experience in New Zealand, that's what sort of they kind of like pull at your heartstrings, is that they tend to understand that everybody's an individual and that you've got to be able to cater to all, not just one size fits all, if that makes sense. Like some guys in a team need a boot up the ass, but some guys need a cuddle. Do you know what I mean? It's just, I found that that's probably my own truth and my own experience from sort of like coming from New Zealand, is we tend to find things like a sense of belonging or playing for something bigger than ourselves, where maybe over here it's very sort of like business orientated, and that kind of drives kind of guys to not be for themselves, but like they're very focused on what they need to do to be better, if that makes sense.
No, absolutely. No, absolutely. Yeah, mate. I hear you 100%, because you look at Eddie Jones, right, and you hear, and from an English perspective, even though I'm Scottish, but from an English perspective, having played in the Prem for years, you look at some of the ways that he goes about his business, and you're like, this guy is a joker in terms of his interaction with the media, with people outside the circle. But you listen to lads within the circle, and the way that he deals with individuals, with Haskell, for example, loves him, arm around him. Marla's the same, but with someone like Owen Farrell, he's pushing him constantly. And I think that is the beauty, isn't it, in terms of getting the best out of your players, is understanding that by giving someone a hard stick might work for him, but then putting their arm around it. I played at Leicester with the Tuolangis, and I played with the late Sarah Rambini. They want love, right? The biggest, scariest players, they need love. That's what they want. to be motivated. And mate, really interesting. I agree with you. I don't think it's a WASP thing. I think it's an English culture thing. That's kind of what we do. You come in, you work hard. You don't want to work hard. You don't do it. You can piss off. Like, that's the kind of what it seems like. So no, mate, that's really interesting. Players' salaries, right? It seems like it's an absolute minefield. It's a shit show. Look at Leicester. They've lost 3 or 4 of their best players. Guys have walked out. Northampton, we're hearing they've done stuff the right way, 12.5% pay cuts. Gloucester, Saracens have deferred payments. Exeter and Bristol have given guys longer deals and they haven't cut their salary. What are you making about all this? You're quite outspoken, you're quite candid, articulated when you speak. Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, and I guess it's hard because, we talked before about sort of the differences, and that's kind of like a big one here, was that like the game is very business orientated, like it's driven by the business first rather than sort of the culture of the team. And I think if you get the culture of the team right, then the business will succeed. But I think here maybe it's get the business right and then the team should succeed. If that kind of makes sense. That's kind of what I feel from sort of coming from where I've come from. But in terms of sort of pay cuts, these are trying times for everybody, not just rugby, but around the world. Do you know what I mean? So I get that, at some point players are going to have to, make sacrifices. Everybody around the world is making sacrifices at the moment. And for some of us, we are still getting paid while we're not even training, like for the last sort of 3 or 4 months. The way I'd see it is, you're getting 75% of 100, which is better than 0% of 100. But at the same time, I understand that rugby's a business and we are the product, if that makes sense. Like, without rugby players, you ain't got no product. Do you know what I mean? So I think there needed to be more transparency between clubs and players, and more open chats and more open dialogue, because some guys just, for us, we were finding out about stuff in the bloody Daily Mail. Do you know what I mean? And it's just like, guys are messaging each other on Instagram like, bro, I'm hearing you getting pay cuts, and this is guys from other English clubs. And I'm just like, bro, I have no fucking clue. But then you hear like 25%, 25% is a bloody lot of quid. You know what I mean? So it's just, I think there wasn't enough open transparency. There wasn't enough open dialogue between sort of clubs and players. And that's why you've kind of got guys, like at Leicester, all of a sudden just walking out, or, that's how it's been portrayed, that they've walked out on their clubs. But, actually that's not really the truth, is it? Like they're well within their rights to reserve their rights. And then they've been told, well, you have to sign this by this date, at 25% less or else. And then guys have decided, that's not what I need to do right now. And fair fucks to them, because they've stood their ground. And, like I was saying before, it is a business and we are the product. And, I think as a collective, as rugby players, we got to understand that. And, I listened to a podcast the other day with Genji. He was talking with Haskell, and that was a really really good eye-opener to sort of everything he was trying to do. And, I think he was on the right path, but, it's scary times at the moment and guys are kind of like separated. But I think maybe if as players we were together as a collective, I think we would have had more power in, what happened and what's been happening and what is going to happen for the game going forward.
Mate, it just feels like it's been rushed. Well, it doesn't feel like, mate, it's been rushed. That's the thing. That the season's not due to start till the second week of August or whatever it is, and you guys have been backed into a corner. And like you said, under the kind of, well, not under the understanding, you're in the situation of being paid, like you said, 75% of your salary, and there's talk of clubs folding. There was talk of Wasps struggling, Gloucester struggling, Leicester struggling, and if players don't take pay cuts, we're going to fold. So I think the rushing aspect seems to be the issue. It's not necessarily taking the pay cut, because, again, I go to Northampton and what you're hearing out of there, they've sat the guys down, showed them the business model and said, look, these are the reasons why we need to take a cut. We're not going to throw a 25% blanket, which we've been advised to by Premier Rugby, which is the governing body, who have now gone into hiding. They've actually sat down and said, this is what we need to do, this is the amount of money, please, in order for us to get the club back to where it needs to get to, and we will reward you, and the loyalty that people speak about in the game, whether or not that exists or not. What have Wasps said then? I mean, is everything agreed there with players? Is it all kind of, I mean, poor Lee Blackett trying to deal with that, one of his first big tasks, but is everything sorted there?
Well, I think it's just a 25% blanket over the lads, and I guess from what I'm hearing is, you know, they were able to sign guys on for extended contracts. So if you were one of the lucky ones, say you signed on for sort of like the next 2 seasons, then this season wouldn't be at 25%. It might be at 10 or 15%. And, you know, each to their own, you know, like as a player myself, like I can't look at a person and be like, man, you sold out kind of thing, because every man's got their own sort of families. Every man's got their, you know, like their own agendas and, you know, mortgages or, you know, people to feed or family to help out. So, you know, at the end of the day, you got to do what's best for yourself and your family and whoever you're looking after, because, you know, like rugby is a finite kind of time, and you've got to be able to make the most of this opportunity that you can, you know, while you're fit, while you're healthy, because you don't know when it's all going to be over. That's essentially what's happened. But, you know, it's 25% sort of for the majority of the squad, I guess, and unless otherwise, then, you know, guys who have signed on maybe have taken less cut this year or whatever. But, you know, for myself personally, it's 25%, and yes, that is what it is. Can't really do much about it.
There's a lot of talk in the Northern Hemisphere and down the Southern Hemisphere about Hoskins Sotutu. I hope I said his name right. So the Auckland Blues number 8 residency, we've spoken about it, is down in New Zealand, but his mum is from England, or he qualifies for England through his mum. He's carving up. I mean, I was looking at some stats here because I don't love that kind of shit. I just looked at it on this case. But highest number of tackles and offloads in the tournament. But again, looking at it as a fan, mate, he's carving up. So Brad Shields, obviously it was, he came over. His journey's been slightly different to yours. But you've come over. If he rang you and said, mate, what do you reckon? Do I come and swear my allegiance to England? Because I've heard that Eddie Jones has been in touch with him. What would Brad Shields, do you think, say to him? What would your advice be? Not just on the situation we find ourselves in, but probably a little bit about everything that we've spoken about. Should he come over?
I'd say for 25k a week for a test, mate, jump on the plane and get going, my cuss. You know what I mean? Like, they're handing out those bags, bro. Frick.
Yeah.
But you know, like I think he's in a really unique spot in New Zealand. You know, over here, you know who's locked and loaded at 8. You got Billy Vunipola, who's, you know, he's still young. He's, you know, like he's probably Eddie Jones's second son. You know what I mean? You know, like he's obviously a favourite, and he's a bloody awesome player. So you kind of got to look at sort of who's in front of you, and if you look at the All Blacks jersey, you know, there is no Kieran Reid anymore. Like the number 8 jersey is wide open. So I'm not saying it's an easier path, but, you know, I'm just looking at it as a you know, sort of what would be the sort of the smart option in the long run, and it would probably be to stay put. I'd probably say stay put. There's no one really who's put their hand up for that All Black number 8 jersey, you know, unless you sort of have Ardie Savea play at 8 and Sam Cane at 7. But apart from those two guys, you know, who have you got that is really sort of staking a claim for their number 8 jersey? So I'd just say stay put and keep your head down, and you know, you're only 21, you know, like maybe if he was 26 or 27 and hadn't been given a crack, then I'd say, bro, get on your bike or get that plane ticket booked ASAP and get over here and you know, fit under that salary cap at Saracens and fill your boots up.
Absolutely, man. Lima, absolutely love that, mate. It's been great chatting to you, and great seeing you fit, and the fact that you've had to spend some time with your family and that you're raring to go and to get back out there as well. So, man, I really appreciate you talking to me.
Nah, no worries, Jim. Thanks for having me on, bro.